and you look at people that are in prison for committing violent acts, whether it's an arson, explosive incident like this, or hurting people and killing, they're all mentally ill. Okay, being mentally ill is not a free pass. If it was, the prisons would be empty. But those on the left really need to check what it is that they are saying. Another thing too, not only are they inciting violence, they're interfering with government business. Remember, this was a big thing after January 6th, that the interfering with government business was the definition of insurrection, according to CNN and Democrats and others. Well, these ICE agents are following direct orders from the President of the United States, and their agency is under his authority in the executive branch. So they are carrying out the government business of the executive branch of government under the direct orders of the President of the United States. And if you're out there interfering with that, getting in front of vehicles, tipping off people when you see ICE vehicles and other, this is insurrectionist behavior too, by the standards that the liberals had, right, when it came to interfering with government business. This event today, we got lucky. People could have been killed and they weren't. But you heard what the FBI said there, that the one civilian who was injured was an immigrant who was at the building to be sworn in as a citizen of the United States. It was a citizenship ceremony that they were there for, and this anti-ICE protester wounded a new immigrant who was just about to become a citizen of the United States. And that's sad in itself as well. All right, so let's get back to more of this. If you're watching on YouTube, this is the guy being taken in. They got him pretty quick. And he looks like he's in some pain there. And another thing too, when it was announced that he was a U.S. citizen, you could almost feel on CNN a relief, because they were afraid he wasn't. When they found out he was a U.S. citizen, on the left, they got all excited, didn't they? Okay, let me play this clip. This is CNN earlier today. This was before the press conference, of course. Yeah, and CNN, they're right there. The media is based out of New York, so CNN's actually right there doing this report as the guy is being carried away. Now, when I talk about the left inciting violence, that's not something I just say. It's true, and you guys know it's true. The last year and a half since the border was shut down and these things have been going on, we've been hearing nothing but anti-ICE rhetoric from the left. It started in Los Angeles, remember? They were throwing rocks at the ICE officers. The U.S. Marine Corps had to be sent in to the ICE offices in Los Angeles to protect it from the protesters who were attacking the ICE agents. Here's Mamdani, the New York City mayor, and he's talking about ICE. Okay, now see it? A rogue agency. It's the mayor of New York City where this attack happened. It's a rogue agency. So what does that mean? Well, what that means, to say they're a rogue agency, it means they're operating separately without any approval of the proper government authority, and they're criminals. So Mamdani is saying here that we have this outlaw agency. They have guns, they have badges, they're ICE, they're federal agents, but they've gone rogue. So that means everything that they're doing is illegal, and they're running around not only violating this. This is what Mamdani's saying. Not only are they violating people's civil rights, these incidents where people have been killed in ICE pursuits. Preddy got into a fight with ICE, if you remember, and he was carrying a weapon. Renee Good in the car. That these, if they're a rogue agency, what's happened here? They're lawless. They answer to no one. They're doing everything that they want to do. They're operating illegally. So these deaths, they're out there murdering people. That's the mayor of New York talking this way. I mean, listen, that's what he's saying. Okay, they're a rogue agency and should be abolished. So what does that mean, to this lunatic that did what he did today in New York City? To him, hearing public officials, members of the House of Representatives, members of the United States Senate, the mayor of New York City, America's biggest, greatest city, right, is saying that they're rogue, they're murdering people, they're lawless, they're outlaws. That tells people like this nut that what they're doing is right, just, patriotic, and that they're doing the lawful thing by going after these outlaws. This is what I mean by the left are inciting violence. Now, if you're on hold, hang in there. I do want to take your calls. If you'd like to call in, the number is toll-free, 888-465-2631, 888-465-2631. The Brian Craig Show is available wherever you get podcasts, okay? So wherever you get your podcast, search for The Brian Craig Show. I'll come up. If you want to catch this show live in video form and be able to call me live, that's on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search for The Brian Craig Show, all right? And if you're watching on YouTube, the call-in number, the toll-free number, is pinned in the live chat, 888-465-2631. All right, so if you're on hold, hang in there. We'll take a quick break, and when I get back, there's a lot more to cover. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. Thanks for joining, everyone. I'm going to go to the phones. Again, the number is toll-free, no matter where you're tuned in from, if you're watching live. 888-465-2631. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Brian. This is Nick out of Baltimore.
Hey, Nick. What's up?
Today? Well, I just want to just mention, I'll be real quick, and that is, it's obvious that the incendiary comments by Mayor Mamdani are responsible for this latest attack, with him running around saying he's going to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu and not follow the law and create his own, of course he's king now, so that's what we've got going on. The other thing I wanted to mention, and maybe Richard or somebody will call in, or Sean, or maybe you remember this, Rashida Tlaib, she's a foreigner too. And she was thrown out of a Trump rally back in 2015 for trying to start some problems. And it's the one in Chicago that they shut down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
And
well,
so
I'll tell you, Nick,
for quite a long time.
If you, I've been following politics my whole life, and what we're seeing now, and this didn't just happen today. It's been going on for since Trump's second term began. What we're seeing now is what we saw during the Vietnam War era, right? People like Bill Ayers would set bombs off in government buildings, right? The Black Panthers were ambushing cops in California and shooting cops. There were all these incidents of domestic terrorism by radical leftists in the 60s and in the early 70s, and now they're back. And this thing in New York City, when he was first identified, now again, this is a developing story, and by the end of tonight, we'll probably know when we wake up in the morning this guy's whole life story. But they were when he was first identified, they were saying that he had Antifa connections.
He may have, and they'll try to sanitize it a little bit, that.
Yeah.
There's one difference between 1968, 71, 72, 73 from today. And today is that you have the media supporting all this.
Well, yeah.
Hollywood is supporting all this.
Exactly.
I mean, it was always left. The media was always liberal and left wing. But I don't remember it like this at all, where they're encouraging violence.
Well, there were the people that were inciting violence back then were the protest leaders, right? Like as an example in Kent State. But the elected officials weren't doing it. And now you have elected officials that are out there, and you mentioned Rashida Tlaib. They have these entire campaigns that are against ICE, and they're and what the clip I played of Mamdani, this is the incitement of violence that they're responsible for, and that's where your First Amendment rights end.
That's right, and in addition to that, like you just said, big city mayors
Yeah.
are joining in on this.
That's right. Mayor,
And it's just,
and governors.
It's going to get worse.
Yeah, governors
I'm
like
afraid.
Tim Walz. All right, Nick, I appreciate the call. All right, you take care. You take care. I want to play a little bit more. I'm going to go to the beginning of the FBI press conference in New York City. Okay, I played you the tail end of it. Let's play the beginning now. Oh my goodness. That means Antifa. He's Antifa. That's what the FBI agent's saying. Okay, so this is the police commissioner that stayed over. Mm. Mm. Okay, now I played that part earlier. Wow, I mean, this guy, he's a nut. He didn't plan on getting away, right? I mean, he was hanging around doing things before he even set the fire off. The fireworks, firing off the pellet rifle, the air rifle, whatever it was. And then he set things on fire. So he had no intention of escaping. He planned on getting caught because he believes he's a freedom fighter. Now, if you're on hold, stand by. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to move on to some other topics unless there's some developments on this as the show goes on. But if you're on hold and you want to talk about this, you're more than welcome to. You can call in about anything I brought up so far on the program, although I've got a lot of other topics that I want to cover. The number's toll free, 888-465-2631, 888-465-2631. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian, and this is the Brian Craig Show podcast. Welcome, one and all. Okay, now again, you're welcome to call in about the attack in New York City, but I have some other stories that have been breaking today that I want to cover. in these midterm elections, there's a big battle going on inside the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party against the Democrat Socialist of America. And this just dropped today on social media. This is David Hogg, and you guys know David Hogg. He has a bit of a history. Okay, now I'll just say this. David Hogg grew up in a mansion. Okay, now of course he's one of the students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. If you guys know about that, but he lived in a mansion in one of the most exclusive areas in all of South Florida. I know because I lived down the street from that school. Yeah. So, and I don't know how his father, who worked for the FBI his whole life, afforded to live in a mansion, but here he is, a kid that grew up in a mansion, is talking about the evil rich people. Isn't that comical, huh? Okay, now this is a bit of constant thing with David Hogg. David Hogg has constantly this thing about the rich. I'll get into that in a minute because that's new. But he's since he first came on the scene, he's been talking about old people, everyone that's older. Apparently, he thinks he's Dorian Gray. Okay, and if you don't know who Dorian Gray was, well, look it up, and it's a very good book. You'll enjoy reading, okay? The Portrait of Dorian Gray. He thinks he's Dorian Gray and is not aging and is still the same age he was in high school. Because when the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas incident happened, David Hogg and everybody else in that group, they were saying that their opinions on the issues should be the way that the country goes, because the people in government are older than them and will be dead first. And since they're going to be alive after those people are dead, their opinions matter. Well, people are born every minute of every day. So, and this act of older people, well, as you grow older, David Hogg, that's going to become, it's getting more and more stupid every day. Now, I apologize for the language, but that's David Hogg. That's one of his favorite words. I saw him on an interview once with his parents, and he was using that word at the kitchen table. My mother, I'm 55 years old. My mother has never heard me use a swear word. If she has, I haven't known about it because I don't speak that way in front of my mother. But David Hogg does, and he talks that way all over creation, no matter where he's at. It's really not appropriate. But David Hogg, he's a lot. You know what he's like? He's the American Greta Thunberg, right? Greta Thunberg. Did you see she got arrested over the weekend somewhere? I can't remember. Somewhere in Europe, Greta Thunberg got arrested. And she started out with the climate change, right? And she was another one about this age thing, that since children are going to be alive after the adults, that children should decide things, right? She's Lord of the Flies. And remember she said, "How dare you come to the children for the answers?" Remember all that? Well, she's grown up now, although her body looks the same as it did when, 10 years ago. But the climate change thing dried up for her. So what is she doing now? She's advocating for Palestinians, right? She wears the Palestinian Arafat scarf and such, and she's an advocate for the Palestinian people now. She gave up on climate change. In fact, she travels the whole world to speak out for Palestinian rights. I wonder, does she still take that sailboat? That she, when she came to America at the UN, she came and left the United States, they say, on a sailboat. I guess, I don't know. I don't know. You can't get through those deserts over there on a sailboat. But she moved on. The point of this is climate change dried up. That whole business of promoting that dried up. So she moved on to another thing, the Palestinians. Well, David Hogg's big thing is gun control. And that's kind of dried up because Americans do not support gun control. We support the Second Amendment for all kinds of reasons. And there's just not much, you can't get much business going with gun control anymore. So he's moved on. So what has David Hogg done to be relevant? Well, like Greta Thunberg, he's moved on. He's now with the Democratic Socialist of America, which is a front group for the Communist Party. And now he's going to be the big spokesperson for them. You know, there's this group of people out there. Some of them are professional activists and some of them are professional politicians. You know, there's a lot of people, they just can't handle not holding elected office or being an activist leader. And they do whatever they can do to prolong it, and that's what he's doing. And he ran into some trouble with his organization, fell apart, and now, you know, and then he was at the DNC as one of these deputy chair titles they gave him because he's a celebrity name. That didn't work out very well. Bill Maher went after him, and now he's trying to be relevant again, being a Democrat socialist. But someone I'd like to hear, since he's promoting Democrat socialism now, David Hogg, I'd like to hear somebody ask him, at what point did he become a Democratic socialist, since he grew up in a mansion in one of the most exclusive, wealthy areas in South Florida, Parkland, Florida. Very exclusive, very wealthy area. Okay? Even though that was a public school there, it was better than most private schools because it's such a rich, exclusive area. It still is today. And I'm sure his parents still live in the mansion that he grew up in. So, I don't know. You know, usually people that support communism, socialism, and are advocating for wealth inequality don't live in mansions, right? They you know, live like the common man in poverty. And speaking of great men in Roma, Hunter Biden. Oh my goodness. Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden did an interview with National Public Radio. Did any of you guys see this? Oh, this was great. So he does this interview, Hunter Biden, with National Public Radio. It gets a little snarky. And, you know, NPR, National Public Radio, is very pro-Democrat. They really are. And Hunter Biden got a little testy with the liberal interviewer on liberal Democrat National Public Radio. And this guy here, I can't remember his name, the guy that's doing the interview, but he's like the #1 interviewer on the national NPR radio network. He does all their major interviews. Oh, let me rewind it because I talked over it. I apologize. Hold on. Okay, I'll play the rest of this. Now, you know, he's saying, you're comparing my pardon to these violent people? Okay? One of the charges that he was pardoned of was a federal gun charge. He illegally was in the possession of a handgun after his drug arrest and everything. Remember all of that? You know, that's a very serious felony. Very serious felony. So if he's against violence, but the possession of guns illegally, that's okay by him? because you were guilty. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here he is on the confession tour, and those aren't the only crimes he committed. He's not a happy guy, and this thing about getting pardons, right? The people that get pardoned are the people that have convictions, right? If you don't have any, if there's nothing on your record, there's nothing to pardon, right? If you don't have a record, there's nothing to pardon. So, it's an interesting thing. Hunter Biden is on and this is the first guy, and I'm very surprised this happened on public radio because they're very, very Democrat over there. Hunter Biden, for some reason, has been on this interview tour across America. And I guess he's in need of validation because I thought he moved to South Africa, but he's back in America. And he wants approval. He's desperate for approval. So he's doing these interviews so he can get people to approve of him, I guess. I mean, I can't think of another reason why he would do it. But he's out there on all of these interviews attacking the people that were pardoned by President Trump, okay? And then this is the first guy that I've seen point out to him that, wait a minute, you had all these criminal charges. Some of them are pretty serious, federal felonies, right? You were pardoned. What's the difference? Hold on a second, guys. Okay, all right. I don't know what that was. I hit the wrong button. It really blows my mind. And, what's very frightening is, Hunter Biden, those couple of things he listed, as bad as they were, are just the tip of the iceberg of what he was doing and how he was living his life. And Hunter Biden, the things that Hunter Biden did are so bad, it's scary because his dad got him off the hook. I got that Miranda Devine book, Laptop from Hell. And Hunter Biden, what he did with the laptop was completely nuts. He put everything he did. This is how much of a drug addict he was, but also arrogant because his dad was Joe Biden. He thought he could do no wrong. Everything he did, he put in writing. And he's got all these crooked deals going on, and it's all in writing, in text messages, DMs, and emails. Everything, And what was very frightening is he's doing all these crimes, and he doesn't even think they're crimes, because he and the Biden family are criminally insane. They don't believe their crimes are crimes. But I got the book on tape, and I was taking a road trip from my house. I was going up to Orlando, and I left really early in the morning, at like 4 in the morning, and I'm listening to the Miranda Devine book, Laptop from Hell, about Hunter Biden's laptop. It was so frightening to me. I'm driving in the dark on the Florida Turnpike. I pulled off at a rest stop, and I did a live stream on YouTube, and it was like so scary seeing how crooked this guy was. And I'm not going to go through all the things of Hunter Biden because I've talked about them a lot back when they were new and news and everything else. But if you want to know what the Biden family is like, get the Miranda Devine book. And I'd recommend that you get the audio book. The narrator is very good. It's very dramatic. It reads like a horror film with the crossover genre of true crime. So it's like Stephen King and Truman Capote and a little Stephen King mixed in. It really is frightening. All right. Okay. Now listen, I'm going to take a quick break, and then when I get back, I got a lot more to cover. Those of you on hold, you hang in there. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back, everyone. It's the Brian Craig Show, available wherever you get your podcast and YouTube. You know, at the beginning, we were talking about this Antifa terrorist attack on the ICE office in New York. And here's Tom Homan at the White House earlier after the attack. Listen. Boy, Tom Homan's pretty pissed. I get it, you know, and here's the thing, okay? What's happening with federal agents is it's kind of new, right? I mean, you know, we've seen people resist police over the years and everything. You know, the time if you've got an issue with what federal or local law enforcement is doing, you don't settle it on the streets. That's what the legal system's for. That's what the courts are for. You know, and if you look at the instances, like we're talking about what's going on with ICE today because of this terrorist attack in New York, but if you look at attacks on law enforcement over the years, whether it's federal or local, it's always incited by some leftist group or leftist politician. That is a sad reality, you know, and they're not called out on it. And we got a big problem in this country with left-wing political violence, no doubt about it. How many assassination attempts have there been against President Trump? I don't even know how many. There's been so many that if I were to write down a list off the top of my head, I would probably come up with 12 to 15 without even thinking about it, right? You know, now if you subtract the Iranian attempts, which are 2, the rest of them are leftist and never Trumpers, just like the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You know, we've got a big problem with leftist political violence in the United States. And the media, no one wants to talk about it. It doesn't get identified as that. You know, they go on TV. I was watching CNN over the weekend, and on one of their panels, they were talking about, well, you know, right, if you look at the statistics, right-wing political violence is far more common than left-wing political violence. Really, where? Where is this right-wing political violence that they're always talking about? Now, they'll always go to January 6th, which was not that, but even if it was, and it wasn't, but even if it was, that was 6 years ago, right? Actually longer, going on 7. So where is all this right-wing political violence that they're always saying is out there and more common than left-wing political violence? This incident in New York, left-wing political violence. The terrorist attack that was stopped, remember that was an illegal undocumented immigrant from Mexico was the leader of that terrorist team that was targeting the UFC fight at the White House a few weeks ago. Anti-ICE, left-wing political violence. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, left-wing political violence. The assassination attempts on President Trump, they're all left-wing political violence. He's a Republican, right? And there's other incidents too. Where is this right-wing political violence they keep talking about? And I'll tell you, if it was out there, I'd be the first one speaking out against it, but it's not happening. They can say it is all they want, but it's not. Now, here in Florida, you know, we got a big election this year in Florida because Ron DeSantis, who's been a very good governor, he's term limited out of office. He can't run for office again. And we've got a primary going on. Byron Donalds is the front runner. He's in the House of Representatives now. And there's 3 or 4 Republicans running against him in the primary. The lieutenant governor of Florida. I live in Florida, and I don't know the lieutenant governor's name. He didn't run. The lieutenant governor that was elected resigned and took a job as president of Florida International University, which is a university in Miami. So the guy who's the lieutenant governor was appointed to finish out the term by Governor Ron DeSantis. So you got the lieutenant governor, that fish sticks guy, and another guy whose name I don't even know. and they're itching to get a debate with Byron Donalds. And these guys, some of them are in the single digits. One of them is at 14. And Byron Donalds came out today and said he's not going to debate them. And I'm glad he stood up to them on that, because the reason they want to debate Byron Donalds is because they're so behind in the polls, they want to be relevant. And if they can get on the debate stage with Byron Donalds, it's televised, right? And not only is it that gives them free publicity, and it puts them on his level as if they are equals or something, and that's what they desperately want. Now, I wanted to play. This is a crazy thing I came across this morning. I didn't get to share this on the morning show today. You know, there's been a lot of talk. Mamdani has been out there saying that he's going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, when he visits New York City. I guess he's going to send out the NYPD to arrest a foreign head of state who has diplomatic immunity and somehow extradite him to the International Court at The Hague, where he'll be tried for international war crimes. That's the fantasy. And President Trump came out today and posted that's not going to happen. And then this interview with Mamdani, I'm not sure when this was. I saw this on X today. This is Mamdani talking about Israel. So I'll play the whole thing. But he's saying, for so many people, Israel doesn't exist. You know, and you hear a lot of times, you'll hear people say, ask the question, does Israel have a right to exist? Does Israel have a right to exist? And honestly, that seemed kind of like a strange question to me. It's a country. It was established by the United Nations in 1948. There's a lot of countries around, right? I never hear anybody questioning a country's existence except Israel and the United States. They don't, they question our right to exist, and Israel's all the time. And now I get it, because Mamdani, this interview, for a lot of people, Israel isn't a country, it's an idea. It doesn't exist. What you have to understand with Mamdani is, when people are speaking, they say a lot of things sometimes that seem crazy. Like what he's saying here is completely insane and nuts, right? Well, his audience isn't you or me or even English-speaking Americans. When Mamdani says things like this, that Israel doesn't exist, it's an idea for many people, or that he's going to arrest Netanyahu, the audience that he's speaking to is the Muslim world in the Middle East. He's saying things to get on the news in the Middle Eastern countries. They're probably playing him on Iranian state television. They're certainly playing him on television in Saudi Arabia and all these places, saying he's going to arrest Netanyahu and this nonsense he's saying here. I don't know what that means. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is just crazy talk. I don't need to break it all down. But, a lot of people in the media, well, pretty much everybody in the media, when they're giving analysis and they're talking about Mamdani, they're getting everything wrong, okay? And what they're getting wrong is he doesn't care if his policies do not work in New York City, right? People are like, well, how's he going to pay for this? It's going to be an economic disaster for New York City. Mamdani doesn't care about any of that, see? What he's doing is using the platform of being the mayor of America's most prominent city, New York City, to get the democratic socialism out there on a global stage. Being mayor of New York City is a bigger deal than being the governor of most states. It really is. I mean, what other city has an official residence for the mayor? Gracie Mansion, right? I mean, that's great. It's a big deal. And it's a very prestigious position to hold. In fact, being mayor of New York City, outside of being the president or a member of the United States Senate, it's probably like the third level of position there is out there. You know, being mayor of New York City is the equivalent of being the governor of California. Being the mayor of New York City is a bigger deal, prestige-wise. I'm talking about prestige, is a bigger deal than being the governor of the state of New York. And it gives you incredible credibility and a platform to promote your positions. And his positions are, Israel doesn't exist, it's an idea. Anybody who says it does, those ideas are 20 years old, okay? And Netanyahu, I'm going to arrest him and send him to the International Court. And it's frightening to me, but you know, and those in New York that are suffering under his failed economic plans, well, you guys elected him. And as far as I'm concerned, New Yorkers deserve what they get. I mean, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And we all told you guys not to vote. If there's one person that I would blame in particular, it'd be Curtis Sliwa, the fakest Republican in this country. We got a lot of fake Republicans like John Thune and others, but the worst fake Republican is Curtis Sliwa, who's responsible for that guy. Now, Don Lemon gave an interview. I tell you, this guy, Don Lemon. Listen. What is Nazi-like about the MAGA movement? Could anyone tell me? You know, and I know a lot of people may say, well, the deportation. No, that's not Nazi-like, okay? The Nazis declared that citizens of their own country were no longer citizens, even many of them who were heroes of World War I that had the Iron Cross. They said, you're a Jew, you're no longer a citizen, and they were deporting their own people and then exterminating them as well, right? After they put them in slave labor camps, and then they would kill them. And there's other horrors too, right? I mean, so, you know, to say something like that, you know, back to at the beginning, talk about the incitement of violence. You know, when you have people that are very prominent, Don Lemon is one of the most famous news people in America today on the left. He really is. And, you know, when you have people, and you're in a position like this, you have some responsibility. And when I was talking about this terrorist attack, this domestic terrorist attack in New York City today about liberals inciting violence, this is an example of it. You know, this is irresponsible speech by Don Lemon, because what he's saying is that ICE are Nazi stormtroopers. Without all the Nazis, it's like the Nazis if you take out all the Nazi stuff. Now, I also want to tell you that the Democrats just had a Nazi that they were running for the Senate in Maine, Graham Plattner, who had the big Nazi SS tattoo from the concentration camps over his heart, on his chest. Right? But MAGA's like that. They had an actual Nazi in the Democrat Party just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And when they kicked him out, it had nothing to do with being a Nazi. It was that accusation by his old girlfriend. You know, this is crazy. You know, if any of this were half true, you know, you look at this crew here, okay? Don Lemon is African American. He's being interviewed by two people. One's African American, and the woman, I can't tell, is she Asian? If Donald Trump was truly a Hitler that was fighting for white supremacy, would non-white people be able to go on a national platform in this country every single day and go after him? No, Nazis don't put up with that.
They're voting for power. They're voting to have a preeminent voice. They're afraid of being fought by many people in the Republican Party and Donald Trump to think that their failures are doomed to something else, the other, the black person, the woman, the Latino, the immigrant, the migrant.
Now keep in mind, now don't forget, the First Lady of the United States is an immigrant, Melania. She's from Slovenia, right? So this idea that Trump is anti-immigrant, he's been married 3 times, twice to immigrants.
That person is doing your job. That person is the reason that you don't have the financial or career success that you think that you should have. It's because of them. We want to take our country back. That's what MAGA is.
Oh my goodness. You know, the thing with Don Lemon here, this is what I wonder with Don Lemon. And I really don't know. And I don't know if you'll know either, but you know, you're welcome to let me know in the comments what you think about this. When I saw him speaking there, I saw kind of like a smile on his face. And I don't really think he believes that. You know, which in a lot of ways makes it worse. I think Don Lemon says those things because it's popular among the left, and he's desperate to be relevant. So he says a lot of things, and he's talking about people are blaming him, are blaming, oh, they're MAGA because this person's taking my job, that person's taking my job. Another thing with Don Lemon here, he thinks that the MAGA movement cost him his job. So he's the one who, actually what he's doing is he's projecting. And you know what, remember Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, the liberal guidebook, the liberal handbook says, accuse your opponent of being what you are. He's the one that's been running around blaming Trump and MAGA for losing his job at CNN. Why would CNN care about that? Those people don't watch CNN. But there is a liberal who's coming around. And, you know, he is coming around a little bit more and more every week. Not all the way, but Bill Maher. Here's Bill Maher. He's talking about what's going on with the Democrat Party right now and what the Democrat Socialists of America really are and everything. Okay, now, you know, notice, you know, this is ABC News. They hate Trump. So here you've got them being handed a major news story because Bill Maher is one of the most prominent leftists in the country, and he has been for years. Remember, he started out with that TV show on ABC. Remember, Politically Incorrect? And he's had the HBO show for years. He is one of the most prominent liberal voices in America. He's got a political show that's very relevant. He has all the politicians on, and he's basically he's saying that he's about to vote Republican. And Jonathan Karl, who hates, you know, Jonathan Karl that's interviewing him, he's the guy that Judge Janine has been going after because he's suspected of vandalizing the reflecting pool in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Remember, he did the live report from the reflecting pool. Jonathan Karl, and he put his hand down there and started pulling stuff off the bottom for the newscast. And he's pretty ticked off at Trump over that. So he's getting this huge news story handed to him right on his lap. He's got one of the most prominent, most famous liberal Democrats in the United States. He's a household name in this country, Bill Maher. He's telling him he's fed up with the Democrat Party. He's out. And Jonathan Karl doesn't want to break this news. He's pivoting to something else. He just that's Trump derangement syndrome with Jonathan Karl is what you got here. Exactly. You know, and it's another thing here with Jonathan Karl from ABC News. You know, not only is he a hardcore leftist, Bill Maher, he's also one of the most prominent, and this really, I used to be a fan of his till he did this. He's an atheist. And atheism is, I don't pay much attention. Atheism is scary to me. I find atheism is evil. I'm certainly no fan of that. And like I was a big fan of Ricky Gervais in England, right? The original creator of The Office. And then when I found out he was an atheist, not only was he an atheist, he made a whole movie about it. The Invention of Lying is a movie with Ricky Gervais. This is when I found out he was an atheist. I had no idea. It's a big fad in the UK, atheism. Daniel Radcliffe, you know, Harry Potter, a lot of prominent celebrities in England are atheists. And The Invention of Lying, Ricky Gervais's movie, is about the Bible being a lie. And I was watching that movie. I couldn't believe what I was watching, and I was done with Ricky Gervais. Bill Maher made an entire film that was released in movie theaters years ago promoting atheism. So here you have one of the most prominent and famous liberal Democrat voices in the United States, and he's the most vocal atheist in the United States, Bill Maher. He told Jonathan Karl he's thinking of voting Republican, and J.D. Vance, J.D. Vance has a book out now about being Catholic. You know, J.D. Vance is a very, very religious Christian. So you've got this atheist leftist who says he's open to vote for the Republican Christian, and Jonathan Karl doesn't want to break news. He doesn't want to have the big story. He wants to try to get Bill Maher to trash Trump. This is Trump derangement syndrome right here with Jonathan Karl, and you see it right before your eyes. It's really sad. You know, all these reporters in the news in this country, most of them are not about breaking news. They're about covering up the news. And Jonathan Karl, his ego was bruised over this reflecting pool thing, so he's striking back. He's trying to get some revenge. Now, if you'd like to support my content, all the content I bring you, my podcast, my YouTube channel, the radio show, everything I do, become a Patreon supporter. And if there's a link in the description of the platform on whatever platform you're listening on, there's a link in the description to my Patreon page. And when you become a Patreon supporter, you get access to so much exclusive content, including my Patreon-only live streams. And on my Patreon-only live streams, and you Patreon supporters, you'll back me up on this, on my Patreon live streams, I talk about things that I cannot talk about here, and I cannot talk about anywhere else, but I talk about them very freely and very openly on the Patreon live streams. It's a great community. It's a live stream much like on YouTube with a live chat and everything, and it's a great community of people. It's a no troll zone as well. And when you go to the Patreon page, you'll see an option to join Patreon for free. If you become a free member, you don't have access to any of the content. You don't even see it. It's like a blank page. You have to be a paying Patreon supporter, which starts at just $5 a month. All right? And then you get access not only to all the exclusive content and live streams I do in the future, you also get access to the entire back catalog on my Patreon page, which goes back many, many years. And if you become a top Patreon, you heard one of my cats in the background. It's one of my daughter's cats. My daughter is out in Los Angeles for a few weeks, and we're watching her cats, and that's one of my daughter's cats in the background that you heard meowing. And if you become a top Patreon supporter, you get a live on-air thank you shout out on each and every podcast episode. So the names you'll hear now are my top Patreon supporters. I want to thank SFjr, Christine, Chuck, Pamela, Nick, Wesley, Doris, Heather, David, Maria in Texas, Alice, LeeZep, Shawna, George, Brandon, John, Frank, Dale, Tina, David, Laura, Rob, Wes, Sue, Janice, Teresa, Irene, Rick, Michael, and Robert R. These are my top Patreon supporters. Thank you all. And again, if you would like to become a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description of this episode on whatever platform you're listening on. All right, my name is Brian Craig. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast. Thanks for joining, everyone. I will see you first thing tomorrow morning on the morning show. Take care. Thanks for